Okay. What's that? StreamYard has lost. Oh, yes, because I changed my password. One sec.
Are you in New Hampshire right now?
Yes, I'm in New Hampshire,
How's it
Gregory.
going there? What's the weather like?
Honestly, it's really nice out today.
Interesting.
What is it today? Let's see. It's
42?
is it?
I don't know. I'm guessing.
It's 72.
Whoa.
We doing big things now. Are we on? I think
I
we
don't
are.
know.
Oh
Live.
yeah, we've been on for 44 seconds. So okay. Let's see.
That's right. Look at
Hello everyone and happy Friday. Henderson. Oh, you know what, Mark? Whatever.
Next week, here come the 80s, baby.
I'm so
Yeah, but we only get like 4 weeks of this, and then it's hot like the sun.
Yeah, and then everyone's melting.
You got to go out with a respirator on.
Nah, no, thank you. Wait, how come I don't see this on? Oh, wait, that's weird. Go live, okay, and go live. Yeah, it wasn't even live on that. Hey, everyone, again. Hello. And I am here again with the infamous, amazing Delcore brothers. And they are going to really be the ones who are giving all of the tea and the awesome conversations for the day.
Tea.
The tea. Yeah, you guys are giving the tea. You're usually the one who gives the most tea, Greg, because you're usually the one who's kind of more ruthless and says the things that are like, hey, Greg, we're still on the live, you know?
Ruthless.
Yes.
First time I've heard that one.
Mark is a little bit more contained.
Oh, they don't know.
AKA silent but deadly.
Right. So we've had so many amazing conversations, and we had left off of a great conversation last week. Now we've had our Bring a Friend week. Yay! And I have to sit here and feel like I have to take toothpicks just to pull my eyelids back and stay up for this live, y'all. Hello, whoever that is that's on. Hi. So we're gonna give you some pep talk today and basically just talk about whatever the heck we want to talk and the group classes and how amazing and wonderful I am. And these guys, they're really more important than me. So yeah, how's class been? Greg, why don't you start? Tell us how your classes have been this week.
They're good. I mean, I think a lot of people need sort of some like guidelines or basic information because, a lot of what we're doing requires kind of like a little bit of vocabulary to sort of, music speak. So I think a lot of people are finding out certain terms that they can sort of apply to what they're kind of talking about. So, it was interesting. I did a songwriting class, and then I did the guitar performance class.
Yes.
And as a general thing, I mean, keep it simple. If that would be one advice that I could give out, is stick to what you know and keep it simple, and then build upon that. Because Rome wasn't built in a day, so you have to take it step by step, and like not even I mean the greatest songwriters still had like sort of like a progression, but it's always good to listen to things and see where you're at. I mean, a lot of it was sort of self realization, like what do people want to do, because not everyone's going to want to write a blues song or an R&B song or whatever, but it's kind of like what you like and what and kind of work within those parameters to start, and then try to grow from there, because it's a never-ending expansion of stuff, you know.
Greg, for a new songwriter, right? Someone who, okay, so we've got a couple people that are going next week that don't even play instruments. Well, first of all, what do you say to someone who doesn't play an instrument, who wants to jump into one of the songwriting courses? And what would you mainly say is the first things to be focusing on when you start out with songwriting?
If you don't play an instrument,
Yes.
I would say that should concentrate probably on like lyric writing, because everyone kind of has done something to that effect. So that would be my entry way in there, was to start writing lyrics and finding how sort of lyrics follow a certain kind of system, be it haiku or some type of prose that, you know, tells a story. Because I mean, essentially, that's what you're going for, is to tell a story. Even if it's an instrumental, you have to have like a beginning, middle, and end type of deal.
Yep.
So it really is about listening and analyzing, and like, what is exactly going on with what you're listening to? How is it structured? You know, and if you don't play any instrument, you should concentrate on lyrics and words and how the story sort of is central to whatever it is you're listening to, and how everything fits around that, kind of filling in the blanks around that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's good. So Greg, well, I don't know if I've even really told many people this, but when I went to Berkeley, I was a songwriting major. I started out as songwriting, and honey, as soon as they were like, "We want you to take the song and put chords to it at home," I couldn't do it because at the time I didn't play keyboard. I didn't play any instrument. I dabbled with guitar, but I didn't know what I was doing. So I ended up dropping the major and I switched to professional music. And then I switched to music business. I felt like I was at Berkeley for like 10 years. I should have
Who
my doctorate, really, to be honest
who
with
was
you guys.
doing professional music? Was it Ken Bell? Was that his name?
I can't
Or
remember.
Ken Brass?
Was it?
I think so. That's who I had, because I had switched to professional music my last year.
Yeah, and
You could pick
I
more than
switched
one major.
switched from that. But like now, when I have students, and like, yes, you're right, focusing on lyric writing. But I tell people, if you don't play an instrument, you better learn,
Yeah.
and you better learn fast, because you can't call yourself. So I'm sorry, you can't call yourself a songwriter. You don't play an instrument. It's almost like, to me. Well, we about to get into some. This is. I'm just being transparent and real. A producer who doesn't play any piano at all. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm
Or
wrong, but
how
I don't
about
understand. I don't
how about
understand
a
that. I don't get it.
how about a chef who doesn't cook?
Yeah. There you go. There you go.
You know, I mean, granted that a lot of the music coming out today
Oh God.
is not really that complicated as far as harmonically. You could basically write a song over one chord. I mean, if you really broke it down to that, it's not going to be that exciting. Hello. It's not
That was
going to be that
like
exciting.
yo, that didn't wake the whole world up. That was actually Shannon too.
What the heck?
And now Greg's frozen.
Am I?
All right. Okay, now you're unfrozen. Okay.
Help.
Oh, what were you gonna say?
Well, I was going to say that learning how to write songs is not the same as learning how to cook, like, scrambled eggs or something,
Right.
It's really, I mean, the functionality might be the same. You crack an egg, whatever, heat the pan, that whole thing, but you have to work at it. And if you're not willing to put some work in, then maybe you should try pottery or horticulture or something. I mean, you know what I mean? It's just, I mean, Mark and I, unfortunately, at this point, we might make it look easy, but it's been a long time. We've been
Yeah.
doing this a long, long, long time.
Yeah.
I mean, to the point where there wasn't computer digital way to record stuff on your computer. We'd using tape. We used tape, and there was a time where if you couldn't get into a recording studio to record, you weren't doing it. I had a Fostex 4-track when I was, I think, 16, and we used that to death. But you had to figure out how to make 4 tracks into 16. So you had to like record 3 tracks, bounce them down to 1 track, record another 2 tracks, bounce those 5 down to a track. So you had to sort of like work with it. Today, you just buy a program or get a free download of something and you can kind of just put things together. But I'm sorry, but it kind of sounds that way. Sounds like crap. Sorry, everybody. But
Yeah.
and this auto-tune stuff,
Oh my gosh.
I was telling Mark the other day, I had a kid come in one of my classes and he's like, hey, I wrote this song, blah, blah, blah. And he played it for me on his phone. And I'm like, that sounds familiar. So it turns out that it was a Radiohead song, basically. I mean, the kid liked Radiohead, the band.
I love Radiohead. What was it?
Yeah, me too. Me
I love
too.
Creep.
Creep?
Yes.
You got to check out like OK Computer or the Bends. Those two. Those are the two best albums.
Are they?
Oh yeah, the guy who writes all those songs, I forget his name, the guitar player. He's been doing soundtracks lately. He did There Will Be Blood and a few other kind of heavy duty. I guess he's a viola player.
Oh wow.
Classical guy, which ties into what we're talking about. Okay, he plays guitar in a rock band, but he has classical background.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mark too started off basically classical. You learned a lot of traditional.
Yeah.
At 7 years old, you were learning like Prelude in C and Beethoven and all that stuff. Then he started wanting to play Billy Joel and stuff like that, right? But only once he sort of got a knowledge of what he was doing, and then we used to just find sheet music laying around the house because my grandfather. I think after my grandfather died, we had like boxes of sheet music or something. And we used to go through it and see if we could find any songs that we knew. And just try like playing them, But you can't do that if you don't know what a chord is. So if you don't know what, G major is. It's really hard. And you can hire someone to help you, hey, can you show me what this is? But at the end of the day, you have to do it.
Yeah.
We can't do it for you.
Well, that's one of the things that I was trying to explain in my songwriting class is that, if you want to write pop music, you don't need to be a proficient musician to write pop music. I mean, it's pretty easy. There's a formula to it, but if you want to write for theater, for film, if you want to get into film scoring, you want to write for theater, you want to do an opera, you need to have the vocabulary. And a lot of people think that it just comes from some kind of membrane to another universe and you pull from it. And that's really not how it works. If you don't have, I use the analogy all the time of my son being a dual citizen he lives in Rio de Janeiro and he lives up here with me. He splits the time. And my Portuguese is not, I don't consider it really good. It's good enough for me to be able to get through society down there and to navigate. But my limitations on my vocabulary aspects limits me on being able to have a conversation because I can't put words together. When I speak, I know that I sound ignorant. With a Brazilian, they may not understand my accent or whatever if you're really in the society and not in like a tourist part. But I'm always trying to extend my vocabulary. I'm always trying to learn the verb tenses because that's the hardest part of like Portuguese for me is the verb tenses. he said, she said, they said, we said, you said. It's all a different verb tense. So it's a lot to like really take in. And music has helped me be able to understand Portuguese more because I think I have that part of my brain kind of like super hyper aware of the process, because music is, music in Portuguese or any language, it's very similar on the techniques that you have to kind of have under your belt to be able to speak a language. And it's the same with music. If you don't even know just the basics of like piano, and I think piano is a good starting point for someone that doesn't, not because I'm a piano player and I favor the instrument, but I think because physically when you sit down at a piano, it's kind of all laid out for you. When you play guitar, you have to learn a certain type of position. You can't have your thumb. On a piano, you just hit your hands on the keyboard and something's going to happen instantly. So, in my harmony class yesterday, I was breaking it down for everybody with just a C major scale. When I was 4 years old, 5 years old, I don't really remember exactly when, but my earliest memories of like music class in school was do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. That's what they taught everyone, and you sang the intervals. And if you can wrap your head around do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, la, ti, do, you can play piano. You can take that same concept and apply it to all 12 keys. And certain keys are going to be more difficult to kind of navigate, like some of the sharp and the flat keys. When you start getting into those keys, it can be a little daunting. But if you start with just C major, everything is like an offshoot or a tangent of that. So once you start learning C major, C minor, C diminished, you just apply that same formula to all other 11 keys. And next thing you know, within a month, 2 months, you can navigate a major or minor chord in any key. And I think that is super important for a songwriter who maybe is more of a singer or maybe plays a little bit of like a guitar. If you start learning another instrument, especially like if you sit down at like a keyboard, it's going to help you with a lot of other areas. You look at someone like a John Williams, right? The guy, you would never know it because you never hear him, but he is an unbelievable, classical piano player. And if you look at the music that he writes for these soundtracks, sometimes John Williams gets a bad rap. People accuse him of ripping off this person and ripping off that person. But, when Greg and I were young and we used to go into Boston on Mass Ave by where we went to Berkeley, there used to be a store called EU Wurlitzer. And EU Wurlitzer was at the time in the late 70s, early 80s, was the music store to go to. And my dad would always have to go there to get, drum heads or drumsticks. So we would go in and, once we went into that store, that was like Toys R Us for us. We went into EU Wurlitzer with thousands of dollars worth of gear, and Greg would go off that way and I would go off in another direction, and my father would have to locate us and pull us off of keyboards and bass guitars and all that stuff. And right down the street is Symphony Hall. And John Williams is in Symphony Hall writing Close Encounters, writing Star Wars, writing Raiders of the Lost Ark. All that music came from Boston. He wrote it all in his office at Symphony Hall. And I used to go to Symphony Hall, as a Berkeley student, you could go for free and watch them rehearse. So I used to go into Symphony Hall at least twice a week to watch the Pops rehearse. I would do my homework in there, but just to be in that room and, I would always hear a piano off in the distance. And I always wondered, is that John Williams? Is he here right now? Look at it, Uncle What's up, Marley?
Let's bring a friend.
So, I think it's super important to, pick a keyboard instrument. It could even be you don't have to go out and buy a grand piano or thousands of dollars worth of keyboards, but even $100 little M Audio MIDI controller, hooked up to your laptop, playing Logic, or even GarageBand has sounds that you can access, which is something that I'm working on with Shannon. Shannon picks it up really quick. And, sometimes you run into technical problems with the software and the hardware. But once you navigate that and you learn what to look for, it can be a lot easier to navigate through like the technology side. And,
It's true
just
though. It's true what you're saying about the keyboard. Everything is laid out in front of you. So if you're thinking of like a bass or low strings, all you have to do is go low on the keyboard and it's right there. The middle section might be where the harmony, the vocal melody is going to be, and then the higher section can be like accompaniment. But it's like really laid out for you perfectly on the keyboard from low to high, and
Hey,
then
Derek!
the repeated octaves.
Derek's on, guys. Derek,
That's the
this
best
is
way.
Greg, Mark. Thank you for joining us. Derek is one of our.
Don't worry, you didn't miss anything. We haven't said anything for the last.
He's one of our newest students that's come and checked out all of King Mark's amazing classes, and he is into production. He is doing some debates between his extended studying of production, and now he's found us. So that's been really great.
Yeah, you know what? And when it comes to all that stuff, like what we're talking about, it really comes back down to breaking it down. Like if you can produce something or you can make something sound good on the minimal amount of equipment or in a minimal way, that's where you should start. Buying, $2,000 worth of plugins and having like a Pro Tool setup and stuff like that. That really doesn't mean anything. That's just the gear. That's the equipment that you have to manipulate. But it all comes down to the operator. If the operator doesn't know what they're doing, it's going to sound like you don't know what you're doing on the most expensive equipment. Doesn't really matter. It's not going to shine it up for you to the point where it's going to be like a magic thing. I mean, like I said in the beginning, Mark and I, we were learning how to record on tape,
Yes.
making that sound good. And then once the whole computer digital age happened, then it was trying to make it sound good on that equipment. But there's no quick fix and there's no secret pill that you take. It's hard work like everything else. I tell my younger students, it's like, when you get a video game, right? You spend like 2 weeks trying to get past the first few levels. And you're relentless about it because you're trying to play the game. It's the same thing. You got to put that kind of time into it to get to a point where you're a little bit, like Mark said with the language, where you're speaking more than just simple phrases and you're sort of elaborating a little bit and you're able to communicate in an original way, past the sort of like rudimentary stuff to make it something interesting. Because who wants to hear, a song that's in the key of E with the auto tune set to E with the bass note on E. I mean, come on.
Well, you got to be careful of, everybody's a star, everyone's a teacher.
No, they're not.
Can I get my thought out? And you really have to be careful of the people that you're looking. It's like all my friends who are unbelievable musicians. Dave DeLome, right? Dave DeLome is a friend of mine. I've known Dave for a long time. He's like the guy in LA. Okay, he does all the Ricky Minor stuff. Every blue moon, every now and again, he'll post like. Before he goes to bed, he'll post a video of him playing just like 4 chords. It might be the ending of like Solar. It might be the ending of Stella by Starlight. But he'll play like 4 chords. But he's not one of these guys who is posting videos like every day of himself playing. And it seems like the people that really know how to play and navigate instruments don't really do that. So people who are like constantly posting or constantly, this is how you make a beat and this is how you go. It's like, go to this website, choose a beat that someone else did. It's a 4-bar beat. And, it might be good for a lot of people. For me personally, after 4 bars, I'm bored. If you don't, have something different that you're going to present, I get turned off very easily. And I think that's because growing up, especially in rock music, which is what Greg and I gravitated towards, more of like a progressive rock. Bands like Yes and Pink Floyd and Rush and, you know, some of the Led Zeppelin stuff and
Pink Crimson.
all the Led Zeppelin stuff. But like, you know, that music was super sophisticated. These songs, you'd go out by the record, and there's like 4 songs on the record. Each song is like 18 minutes long. We got so used to these like songs, these rock songs in the 80s, late 70s, that were literally just the same format as a classical piece. There was a first act, a second movement, and a third movement. And that's what we kind of listen to all the time. I mean, you listen to some of those early Rush albums. Yeah, they'll have some radio-friendly songs, Spirit of the Radio, but then there are other songs like Natural Science, which are 9 minutes long. And I'm trying to tell the students in the songwriting class, if you write an 18-minute song, so be it. Don't worry about the radio. Don't worry about who's not going to like it. If it feels good and it's natural and it comes out of you organically, then that's great. Greg and I do that all the time. We write these songs and then we got to figure out how to make it shorter. It's like, no, we don't. It is what it is. You know, we do it, we record it, we produce it, we put it in our library, we put it on the shelf, and maybe revisit it 6 months or a year later. But I don't try to go into the songwriting thing. Okay, I have to write a song that's 3.5 minutes that has a verse, a hook, a bridge. No. It's just like whatever comes out of me, you know, that's what happens. And whatever the end result is, sometimes I don't know when I'm starting the whole process. And it's a journey. It's supposed to take you somewhere. So for me, when I listen to, you know, even some of like the Britney songs that we would play every night, you know, you do 4 years, and I'm not talking about the 16 years before the residency, but, you know, you get on stage every night, you're playing the same 90-minute show 3 times a week for 4 years. And I would have to find spots in the music without interfering with the song, that songs that I didn't write, that either Max Martin wrote or whoever wrote, Dr. Luke, Kesha. I would have to find spots in these songs to make it interesting for me so I didn't get bored, because you can get bored very easily playing pop music every night if you don't make it exciting. And there are some people who have a very militant view of stage performing and how you're supposed to approach the songs, and that might work for other people. But for me personally, I knew that if I took a liberty on stage and I played a chord that had no business being in pop music, but it sounded good for a live application, I knew that the artist had, like, I had full autonomy with the artist to be able to do that. And every now and again, they would hear it in the side fills on stage, and they would turn around to see where it came from. Like, oh, do that again. Oh, I heard that chord last night. I want you to do that every night. Okay, I'll do that every night. So now this thing that I did to make myself a little bit more, I don't want to say bored, but less kind of like dormant, because it becomes routine. I said, okay, now the artist heard what I did. They liked it. I'm going to do that every night now. And then that becomes a little bit like, okay, now I got to do something else. So you pick your moments in the songs to make it interesting and to keep it fresh for you so you don't get bored. I mean, you know, I played those songs for a long time and I got used to them. And thankfully we would change them up every tour. But had not had the language, this overabundance of language, I wouldn't have been able to hear, oh, I can go here, I can go to this spot, there's a break in the music here, and I can add some kind of synth riff or something to make the audience, like, you know, a lot of people would come to multiple shows. And when you do the same 90-minute set every night, I would always throw in something different. So every show was unique. Even if my little 5% part of a song, if I changed a chord or I reharmed, I did it. Most of the time I did it was to get the reaction from Greg, because Greg was across the stage from me, and I would play a chord and I'd look at Greg and he'd be like, he would hear it, and it made it exciting for the band. It made it exciting for the dancers. It, you know, one little chord change that was different from the rest of the song would make everyone on stage, like, you could see their energy went up. And those are the things that refer back to like your vocabulary and your knowledge of chords and how all the chords interact with each other and how all the notes in music really are all relative. It's just how you use them. But if you don't study it, if you don't read books, you're sometimes your vocabulary and things like that kind of get a little bit lost or lackluster. So that's why reading is important. Not reading music, just reading books. Anyone that has any type of confidence issues, which I did especially when I was at Berklee, being in those halls, hearing all those amazing piano players, Mike Mara, who was my instructor, he says, you need to go out and get the book, The Inner Game of Music, which was basically a book that was based off of The Inner Game of Tennis. And The Inner Game of Tennis was a book about how a athlete can deal with the adversities and the self-doubt that they have while they're playing a tennis match, because tennis is not a team sport. It's a singular sport. It's a solo sport. It's you against another opponent. So, tennis players have dealt with this struggle of confidence and calming yourself when you're in the moment to be able to harness what you need to do to have a good match or have a good game. And the same principles apply to music. So anyone that's a little timid, stage fright, confidence, I don't sound good tonight, I'm tired, I didn't eat. This book, The Inner Game of Music, it certainly helped me when I was at Berklee to calm myself, especially in like the proficiencies when you walk into these rooms with these world-renowned piano players who are judging you on what your abilities are. And they're either going to pass you or they're going to fail you. And, I got this book early on. I think I was like maybe a senior in high school when I got this book, because I had been studying 2 years before Berklee. I shed my ass off for 2 years before I even walked into the doors, because I saw what Greg was going through. And he was dealing with it much better than I would have. So I said, I need to get myself like where Greg is now at the end of his first year. I need to be there when I walk in the doors, because as a kid, I had confidence issues. I had a hard time with anxiety and those things. So without going too far off onto the left field about reading and all that stuff, it all relates. It's kind of all one. It's, Greg and I are huge Star Wars fans, and it's like you talk about the Force, and the Force is like all living things binding the universe, and we took to that, I think, because we really took to that concept of the Force because we're musicians. And like for us as young Jedis studying music, that was our force, was being able to express ourselves musically, because we grew up, we're 14 months apart. When we weren't beating the hell out of each other, or Greg beating the hell out of me, we were playing music. So we had this perfect, like, symbiotic thing of being kids, climbing trees. There were, video games were like not even out when we were like 5, 6 years old. Like I think Pong had just come out, and we're showing our age now, products of the early 70s. We had each other to go out, play street hockey, skate on the pond behind our house. And then, we'd go in, and then we would turn on all the band gear that my dad's band would leave in the basement. And we started playing music, and we didn't really know what we were doing. We were just pounding out the ideas and writing songs like Cops Can't Stop Chasing You. 8 years old, and you're talking about cops, chasing you. What the hell are you doing at 8 years old with the cops? But, we saw a high-speed pursuit one day, and my mother's car, we were in the back seat coming back from a toy store, and we went home and we wrote a song, Cops Can't Stop Chasing You. So we were writing music when we were like 6 and 7, and then the formal lessons started shortly thereafter. I would say, I think I was about 7 or 8 when I started taking piano lessons. And if I had $1 for every time I wanted to stop playing, I wouldn't have to. I'd be living on an island right now somewhere. But my parents kept me on track. I'm thankful that I had the support of not only my parents, but of like my brother. Yeah, don't worry about it. You'll get there. Because it's easy to get frustrated. It's easy to sit down and practice for 2 weeks and not feel like you're getting anywhere. It's like losing weight. Sometimes you don't see when you're losing weight. Other people will see it. It's hard to see like the progress of losing weight and getting in shape and all those things. And it's the same with music. It doesn't happen overnight. It didn't happen overnight for me, even with highly developed ears like both Greg and I had. I would listen to a song and I would start to bang. I would find the relative tone. Sometimes I was a third above the root. I was a fifth below the root, but I was in the key of the song. I could identify the tone and sit down at an organ and start banging out songs. It could be just the like melody, and that's when my parents said, "Oh, we better start looking into this." And yeah, I want to take piano. I want to take piano lessons, and they got me a piano. I started playing, all the classical stuff, and then my eyes got hip to synthesizers and that whole world, which is a completely different world than just a piano, right? So when I started getting hip to these sounds and going to see concerts and seeing people play these keyboards, I wanted a keyboard. And my dad was like, "Okay, you learn how to play Just the Way You Are by Billy Joel, and I'll get." And so I shed that song, right? For months, didn't tell him, hit it. And then one day I started playing it. He took me out that day and got me a keyboard. He was so proud that I had done what he had asked. If you can master what you're doing on this instrument, then I'll get you a keyboard, but you got to start here. And my dad, being a drummer, had the foresight and had the presence of mind to keep me on that track of sticking with the acoustic piano, because all the technology that's like coming out is still in its infantile stages. If you think about it, technology is it's like a toddler. There's still a lot more development that has to happen with anything that's like technology driven, especially with keyboards. Any synthesizer that I have, that I own, and I own about 37 synthesizers, not one of them is as sophisticated as an acoustic piano. So if you have the luxury of being able to sit down behind an acoustic piano and play, great. If not, there are other solutions that are inexpensive that you can get a Casio with speakers on it or 88 keys. So,
Well,
I-
then you got to deal with people ragging on you. And that's the thing that we didn't have an internet where you're learning how to play Just the Way You Are, and then you're looking at your news feed later that day, and some kid's like ripping on like Chopin or something, And that's kind of like the problem with today, is that everyone's trying to like, oh, look what I can do. Oh, look what I can do. Really, the moral to Mark's whole story that he just told is that you got to start someplace in
Yeah,
order to get someplace.
absolutely.
And where you start, you have to be firm on the ground, and you work your way up. I mean, Led Zeppelin, Mark mentioned Led Zeppelin. If you take Zeppelin's first album and then you go to their last album, it's a huge amount of territory that they covered, but they had to start at the first album. Same with Rush, same with the Beatles, same with the Jackson 5. I mean, you can take any group. They started at one point and then they ended at another point. And in between, they learned whatever they learned, they tried to apply, they tried to expand upon. You can't start at 10. You got to start at 1 or 0.
Yep.
And
Stacy says, go ahead, Greg.
I was just gonna say, like Mark, he kind of summed it up. You gotta methodically do it. You can't be distracted by what everyone else is doing. I mean, the TikTok and the Instagram stuff where people are playing 30 seconds and they're ripping a lick. That's all good and fine, but that's not music.
Yep.
That's like that's like doing like one card trick and calling yourself a magician. You need to do like a whole show to be a magician.
Yeah.
To be a musician, like Mark was saying, how many times did he play the same thing through the same song? Hundreds of times. And then at some point he says, you know what? I'm getting a little tired of this. I'm going to change it. Only because he mastered it in its original form. Then you can take it to another level. you can't start by just like, hey, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And I think people, because of social media and because of what the amount of information out there, are too scatterbrained. You got to focus yourself. You got to line up a plan and stick to it, or else you're just going to flounder away, and it's just going to be like,
And the other
everyone bites the dust.
and I know someone has a question, Tiffany, but I just wanted to reiterate what you said. It's like, this whole TikTok and Instagram generation, you see what it's doing to young women, right? It's
Yes.
very obvious that there's a world out there being exposed to people that isn't legitimate. It's filters and it's makeup, and no one looks like that. And believe me, I'm not an expert on everything, but I've been around and I've seen the world. I've been to exotic places. I've seen people, beautiful people, ugly people, poor people. I've been all over the planet. I got 117 stamps on my passport from different countries. That was the best education that I got. And these Instagram models, and those people don't exist. They exist in Instagram. They don't exist in the real world. If you go to Vegas, you go to a club, you're going to see people that are trying to be that, but they're really not. They're like failing miserably. But it's the same with music. People are going to turn on. Nowadays, you see 8-year-old girl playing, a Jack Pastoria song, or like these virtuoso musicians. That's a little bit outside of the realm of what is really happening in music in society. So I can
Right, there are
see
exceptions to everything.
people getting turned off really, really easily by, oh, I'll never sound like that. And that was kind of what I had walking into Berkeley. For me, my Instagram when I walked into Berkeley was physically being there and listening to all these amazing musicians, thinking to myself, I'm never going to sound like that. And then slowly, you see yourself like progressing to a point where you're like, okay, I'm doing what these guys were doing. When I walked in the doors, these guys had been there 3-4 years. They had studied with Tiger Rikoshi. They had studied with Mike Mara. They had studied with David Rosenthal, who's, the musical director for Billy Joel. I had that type of access to those people. People, they have their minds blown when I tell them that I had Dr. Bob Moog, who invented the Mini Moog synthesizer. I had him for a teacher, as a guest teacher for 2 weeks. And back then, I knew who the guy was. And when he walked in the room to teach, I looked at everyone else in the room, and they were like, okay, here's a substitute teacher. I'm like, do you people know who this guy is? Like, the reason that we're studying this is because of him. And he taught the class because my real teacher wrote the manual for the Mini Moog. So there were people in this class who were like super proficient at like programming, and it's not like you was seeing it every day. And people have to. This is why I always advocate being careful what you see on Instagram and TikTok, and these people. I go to the supermarket a couple times a week. And in Las Vegas, there's this big thing that happens at the supermarkets where people will be outside and they'll have an accordion with a bucket, homeless, right? Guys playing an accordion, right? And 2 weeks ago, there was a guy. He looked like he dug a hole through Kiev to get to Las Vegas. Like, he came up through the ground, right? And he had a violin. He wasn't playing. And people are throwing people. He had a recording. He had like a drum loop. I think he was playing "It's My Life" by Bon Jovi, of all songs, right? It's my life, I now or never, right? I'm gonna live forever. And the guy's playing violin, and like he stopped to like pick his butt or something, and in the middle of the, and like I'm looking at like my girlfriend Chrissy. And I'm like it's almost like those pictures, like, wait for it, like, let me know when you see it, like when you see it. And I'm like, people are throwing money in this guy's bucket. They don't even know he's not playing. He's faking to the track or whatever. It's all pre-recorded. So, you don't know if the person's really playing. They're playing maybe someone else's stuff on Instagram. You got to be really careful on, like, I would just say, just ignore that stuff altogether. Don't even pay attention to it. If you want to get some like a creative retreat, you want to look at what other people are doing, yeah, okay, great, I get it. But these people that are, trying to advocate, let me show you how to write a beat or how to write a hit song, I would be very suspect of those people, because I've been lucky enough to be able to, like, call like someone like Max Martin, who I know very well because he wrote a lot of songs for like Britney and NSYNC and the Backstreet Boys. And just because I work with Britney, sometimes you have a close relationship with the songwriters. So those are the people that I tend to listen to. Someone who's proven that they've written hit songs and, Ace of Base, the Britney stuff. I mean, and you look at his process, especially of Max Martin, to use him as an example. The guy's brilliant. He just knows how to write that formula, but he has the background. He has the classical knowledge. He has the jazz knowledge, and that's what makes him a really good songwriter and a really good, producer. So I think
not everyone can do that.
Not everyone can do that. You can learn and get there at some point. It doesn't happen overnight.
Right.
So don't get caught up with someone who is just like a savant when it comes to that type of approach. There's a lot of people who are just so gifted, but everyone's different. I learned at a different pace than Greg. Greg learned at a different pace than I did. I have more of the technology side. Greg is more geared towards the music. So when we work together, it's a good balance.
So someone says this. Someone says, Marc, I can definitely confirm my clients have a hard time seeing what I see as far as their results. They don't see it right away because it's not drastic. Small progress over time leads to massive results.
But everything has that process. There's not one thing in life that happens overnight. It's a fluke if it happens overnight. But what Marc explained, all the people he heard in the Berkeley piano rooms playing, Thelonious Monk and playing Oscar Peterson, Perfect Souls, right? As great as they were technically and musically, improvisational wise, these people couldn't program a road sound. They didn't know how to, get an organ sound on a keyboard. Marc was programming during that time. So what goes to show, where are you putting your emphasis on? You can't do everything at once. Marc knew how to manipulate, computers and sound design. And it was way ahead of these other guys who were just practicing 8 to 12 hours a day, which is great. But I mean, you're not going to get a gig playing Oscar Peterson today, right? If anyone even knows who that is out there.
Yeah.
So on one hand, it's good to be technical and proficient, but on the other hand, what are you trying to do? You got to focus in and narrow it down to one thing, because no one can do everything. And what Marc was referring to for, Instagram and TikTok and all this other stuff is just, these are all one-trick ponies. Oh, look at me, I'm playing super fast. Okay, big deal. Anyone can do that. I don't see anyone writing a symphony, on TikTok.
Yeah, no, seriously.
You know what I mean? Or even singers, they do the same thing. They go for the part of the song with the high note. Okay, great, fantastic.
Everyone's heard the old, the saying of what comes easy won't last, what lasts won't come easy. And we live in a generation now. Thankfully my son isn't really like, he's not this way with that. I mean, he's going to be, I can't even believe it, he'll be 21 in May. And it really does go by fast when you're like a parent and you see. But I think my son having the ability to grow up in both countries, he spent equal amount of time in Rio de Janeiro as he has in Boston. And that's given him this innate ability to kind of not be like the typical 18-year-old nowadays, where everything is instant. You want knowledge, you go to Google, you search it. If you want to know what's in a C minor 7 flat 5 chord, you can Google it. Doesn't mean that you know physically where it is on the piano, but if I ask a question in a class, I know that someone can Google it and give me the answer. But that's not really doing you're doing yourself a disservice by taking that type of approach and learning. And I agree. A lot of people don't see the small incremental things that happen in your development to get you to the end result. If I could have practiced a year and been playing Chick Corea solos, yeah, great. But thankfully, I had good enough ears to help me navigate through learning that stuff. And it didn't happen overnight. There are songs that I'm still trying to figure out 30 years later that I tried to figure out in Berkeley. That you just, you figure out a passage and then you put it away and then maybe you go back to it 2 years later or whatever. But, you can listen to, Kind of Blue, cover to cover. And you'll never be able to play that way, even if you play everything note for note. It's the vibe, it's the energy, it's the way that you phrase a note or a passage, And had I not had all of that knowledge and all of that training, as easy as it sounds, as easy as it may sound, I never would have been able to play. I mean, 2 notes, right? 2 notes. So, there's a way to play that and make it sound hip and to make it stick out. And, if you're going to break the rules, you should really know what they are beforehand. Don't just start breaking. And I see a lot of people doing that. And even with some of my piano students, I say, you can do that. I'm not like super militant when it comes to piano technique. If you want to use your second finger or your third finger on a note or whatever, that's fine. There's a way that you should do, but you should learn to use your third finger first and then switch to what is comfortable, because sometimes I never play. I'll practice major scales all day, every day, just to keep my fingers and my muscle memory going. But I'll notice it as I get through all 12 keys. Wow, I played these 3 scales differently than I'm supposed to play them, but it felt better that way. It felt comfortable. I'm going to use that type of fingering on a scale as opposed to what they teach you to do. Use your third finger on this note, use your fourth finger on this note, bring your thumb underneath. When you play a scale, it's 8 notes. You got 5 fingers. 5 plus 3 makes 8. So I try to teach it that way. You got to play your first 3 fingers and then bring your thumb underneath. There's all types of techniques that help you navigate when you're playing the piano. And I'm glad that I spent, thousands of hours, Greg, tens of thousands of hours over 40 years.
Never ends. And that's
never ends.
If you're looking for the quick fix, pick another thing to maybe pick basket weaving or.
Well, that's what people who say to me, I'm looking to get into the music industry. I want to be an artist. I want to write songs. What do you play? I don't play an instrument. What do you recommend I do? Find something that you really love to do besides music and do that.
Yeah.
Not to be rude, but it's daunting. Greg played hockey as a kid. We both played hockey. I went and played football. Greg played hockey, and Greg went to a camp run by a guy, Paul Vincent. And Paul Vincent was a mother fluffer. This guy was next level teacher, instructor. And my father was like, yeah, why don't you sign up for Paul Vincent's class? I don't know how much it was at the time, but it taught you techniques on how to be a better skater. That's what it was really geared towards, was skating. And this guy used to throw bowling balls at their feet. He used to check them. And these are how old are you? 10?
Yeah, 10, 11.
9, 10 years old, and you got this former NHL player checking you, forechecking you with the stick. But it was teaching them to be better skaters, and it may have looked that never would have flown nowadays. Like
No.
the way parents are,
Not at all.
not going to happen.
I
No,
But
remember, I think once a month, he used to make us skate for 2 hours straight around the rink, to the point where people were like,
passing out.
falling down, like they were like, but everyone was doing it. There was no one saying, "Well, I have asthma." Oh my, I hurt my ankle yesterday. It was just like, hey, if you can't do it, then maybe you should play badminton or something, or maybe learn how to play chess.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same thing. It might sound harsh, what we're saying, but it's like you have to commit yourself and be 100% committed, and
Yeah,
not care what everyone thinks, and not care how fast you're progressing, or whatever it is.
that's
You got to
right.
stick with the program and go through, or don't do it.
Yep.
You know what I mean? There's other ways to get TikTok like followers and Instagram things. You can experiment with filters and whatever, and do kind of crazy things. But music is not, it's not this thing where you can just really anyone can be, have access to it past the listener stage, right? Not everyone can be creative, just like not everyone can make a movie. Not everyone can, invent the next chemical compound that's gonna relieve arthritis. These are all specialty things. Everyone enjoys music. Everyone loves music. I know that. But to get on the inside and to recreate it or produce it or do something with it other than the way it was originally done takes time and it takes work. And yeah, some people are more talented, some people have better ears, some people have better facility, whatever, but there's always something that you have to work on in order to get everything together. And it takes time. And if
And
you're
it
looking
takes
for a
a
quick
certain
fix, get it.
personality too.
Yeah.
There's
The
a certain
personality. Well, how
personality
about that?
type. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
we've got some people that have come through TCS who their personality is so touch and sensitive. Do you know what I mean? Forget it. You won't last a second in the
No,
industry.
no one wants to be
Listen.
around you.
Freaking second.
It's true.
A couple years ago, I did a show for CBS called Home for the Holidays, and it was Josh Groban and Kelly Clarkson were the hosts. And I got a call from a friend of mine to do this Home for the Holidays. It was like a month before Christmas, and it was a CBS special for really horrible situations that like children were in foster care. Foster parents beating them and abusing them. And CBS, in their infinite wisdom, decided that over the course of like 10 years, they were going to do a show to raise money. And it was a beautiful cause. So it was 2-day taping at Manhattan Beach Studios in Manhattan Beach, California. And I was the playback engineer for the musical artist. I think it was Casey Musgrave. What's her name?
Musgrave.
Yeah, Casey Musgrave, Josh Groban, Kelly Clarkson, and a country singer.
Flavor Flav.
No.
Not
No.
LeAnn Rhymes.
It was a country singer, male. Kane Brown.
Oh, I love him. I love
Right?
Kane.
Great guy. Such a sweetheart, Kane Brown, right? So I had to work with all 4 artists in their musical camps, build the tracks, and play them with the house band that the Home for the Holidays had hired. And I had to wear a headset so I could listen to the director in the booth. And I've done a lot of TV over the last 25 years, but this one particular case, and this is like maybe 4 or 5 years ago, there were children of all different shapes, sizes, colors, certain types of disabilities, kids who were sick, wheelchairs, maybe kids who were autistic or had Down syndrome. And the director, in between the tapings of the sections, because it wasn't live, it was taped for later on, the things that I was hearing in my headset that the director was saying about people in the crowd. Get that person, get that kid out of the shot. He's ruining my shot. That kid doesn't look right. It's like he doesn't look right because he's ill. He's sick. And the level in the entertainment business, period. It's not just for music, but acting, theater. The level of like meanness, I don't know what the word is, meanness, non-compassion is so,
insensitivity.
you don't, and Berkeley won't teach you that, Full Sail won't teach you that, nothing is going to teach you that except the experience. No one ever taught me that I was going to work with some ridiculously crazy off-the-wall director who was going to be literally in the headset. Now, no one can hear this but the people who are part of like the production. No one hears what this guy's saying, screaming on the top of his lungs to get someone out of a chair because the camera angle is being infringed upon by a kid who's sick or picking his nose, or he doesn't know any better because he's not, he's got a disability. And I've heard things that record labels have said, managers have said about artists, and I just like, it's good to know, it's good to hear. But anyone that's even a little bit sensitive, you might want to keep that in mind.
Yes.
That there's a whole level of people that you're going to come across. Doesn't matter if it's a gig at the Hard Rock Cafe or if it's the 57th Grammy Awards. The people behind the scenes, the guys who have been doing it for 30, 40 years, who are in their 60s, they're very mean. Not all of them, but most of the people that I've like come across in my career, I say to myself, you know what? Like, we were always told, be a good person. We're both raised Roman Catholic. We read the Bible. The message that I got was be a good person. And here's a show, CBS, Home for the Holidays. It's a Christmas show about kids who are disenfranchised, and you got a director yelling at the casting people to move people out of the shots because they don't look right. They're ruining my shot. Well, isn't that what the whole entire thing's about? It's about drawing awareness. So it goes with, like, in some of the people that I work with one-on-one, I try to get them ready for this, because you could walk into a record label's office and they could be like, yeah, you sound really good, but we don't like the way you look. And I've heard that. I've heard people say that, and sometimes it crushes people, and they fold and they dig a hole and they go in the hole and they stay in there for the rest of their lives, and they don't do anything artistic because one idiot made some kind of offhanded comment about the way that they looked or whatever. So that's a whole part of the artist development that is pretty unique for what we're doing, Tiffany, is because no one's gonna tell you about a story like that. And a lot of the guys that I work with that don't necessarily give back like I'm giving back, they're like they will never share that experience. I'm all about like letting people know, I like the way you look, but from my experience, I know what sometimes they're looking for or what they're going to say to you, like the hairstyle or like jewelry or like, the way that you dress on stage. Kelly Clarkson, for a big part of her career, she didn't wear shoes. She went on stage barefoot. And the, Live Nation, these people would give her a hard time about that. She wants to wear bare feet. Let her wear bare feet. And that's not bothering anyone. Oh, well, you look trashy. It doesn't look like, it doesn't look like it's like a professional thing. Well, that's not for you to say. The girl can sing her ass off. She's an unbelievable singer. She has a storied, type of, career. We all saw her on American Idol. Jason Halbert, who was a good friend of mine, he's her musical director. And, because I know Jason, I spent some time in rehearsals, so I see what she's doing. And even in rehearsals, she wouldn't wear shoes. So if you're the type of person that doesn't want to wear shoes, don't wear shoes. That doesn't matter what anyone says. Right? Free your feet and your mind will follow, right? So
That's right.
there's even a Kelly Clarkson she's getting grief from the concert promoter because they want her to put shoes on. So, there's going to be 150,000 different people telling you what you should do. Stay true to yourself. Thelonious Monk said, do what you do, even if it takes people 15 years to catch on. Don't
Love it.
Don't change your integrity or don't try to do something because you think that, this is what's hip now. Do what you do. Stand out from everyone else by doing something unique in and amongst what it is about your personality, or maybe you want to be like a Ziggy Stardust and like have an alter ego like, David Bowie did for a long time.
But don't lose sight of what you're trying to do, which is music.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like all that image stuff is all good and fine at the end of the day, but what are you presenting to people? What is the actual goods that you have beyond the way, you look or the way you act or your opinions and stuff like that? I mean, get down to the nitty-gritty and concentrate on music and developing yourself no matter where you're at, and embrace it and then move forward with it, and try to surround yourself with people who support that, and not try to make you into just another flavor of the month, because there's way too much of that happening. There's not a lot of staying power. I can't even really name 3 artists in the last 5 or 10 years, new artists that have made an impact. It's it's flavor of the month, flavor of the week, and then you're done.
Then you are done.
Good night, everybody. Yeah. So how do you have longevity?
Yep.
What are you going to do?
Stacy says industry is cutthroat. Must have thick skin going in. Confidence must be there. That way, not saying it doesn't hurt. However, confidence, you can brush it off. And then Derek says originality is key to capturing your audience. And Stacy has a challenge to you, Marc and Greg. What's the challenge, Stacy? I know she did mention earlier. She said you guys should do a TikTok video on how it's supposed to be done nowadays.
What am I going to do? Like the Big Bank, one of those Big Bank
on TikTok on how music should be created. Yeah, Marc, I wanted you to hit that. Oh, baby, again.
That on one of the workshops that we're going to be doing in April, I'm going to break down a Britney. I'm going to break down a Britney song in like the Pro Tool session. Okay. So
can we do the sometimes I run, sometimes.
But you don't want to do that one.
Well, we'll have, in this workshop, I'll explain all the daunting, how daunting it was, because you know what, I love that song, right?
And hit me, baby. Oh God, forget it.
Didn't want to.
We didn't do it that way.
She didn't want to do them. She didn't want to do them that way.
We did a rock version. We did almost like a goth rock or.
Ooh, I love it.
Yeah. Well, which goes to prove if it's a good song, it can be done anyway. You can do it as a waltz. You know what I mean? If it's a good song, strong melody, and strong harmonic sense, you can do it any style,
Oh, yeah.
But in order to do that, you have to learn how to do it in every style. You have to learn the chemical makeup of every style. You just don't snap your fingers, put it through a filter. I mean, you can do it, but that's what it sounds like. And then no one's interested after 5 minutes.
So what was the challenge? What was the challenge? We have to do a TikTok video?
Yep, okay. And I got a student that's going to call me in any second, and then they blow me up if I don't answer. So the challenge is to do a TikTok video. Everybody doing this TikTok. On how music should be created.
We won't get any blowback from that.
Like in terms of like production, like how a song should be written.
Yes. In terms of
Okay.
right, that's what you mean, Stacey, right? In terms of production,
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that's what she
Challenge accepted.
Challenge accepted. Boo boo.
Or you can just buy the Beatles anthology and see how they did all their demos and what George Martin added to it and how the songs ended up. You can do it that way too. Do a little research and see how things were demoed. They were done 5, 6, 10, 12 different ways and then finally released and then a hit song.
Yeah. And everything that we're talking about, we cover in these courses, in these group classes.
Yes.
We're kind of like spitting everything out here now, but like this is, what's my class, an hour long for like right? These classes I always go over sometimes because if someone asks me a question and it's an elaborate type of story, I'll go
so generous in that because I'm like, okay, we're done.
Well, you have your schedule. Your schedule is more full, of course. You have a lot of vocal students. I have more of a luxury of being able to do that than you because you're just back to back to back to back. But everything, like I said, everything that we're talking about, we cover in these group classes, even in the one-on-one classes. The artist development thing that I'm doing is basically one-on-one time. A lot of people, I have a show coming up in a couple of months. I want to get ready for it. So I teach how to make the most out of whatever time you have to rehearse, to put your show together. Some people are doing 15-minute sets at like the Whiskey A Go-Go. Some people are playing CBGBs or something of that effect in New York. What's the best bang for my buck when I get on stage? Well, this is what you have to be like ready for. You got to be ready for the sound is very important. When you play a live show, sound will make or break you. So having knowledge of sound and how the whole entire apparatus works is important. So when you get on stage, if you don't hear something, if it doesn't sound right, you can properly, convey to the sound people, I need more of my voice in my monitors. I need to hear more of the track. What you laughing?
And good luck dealing with the sound people. They're always so pleasant to work with.
Well, sound engineers, it got voted the most angriest people. It's the most angriest profession with sound engineers, and
100%.
And I don't consider myself a sound engineer. I'm a musician first, so I'm outside that category. But in my experience, a lot of sound engineers that I've met they're different people.
And watch out when they ask you, so how does it sound? What do you think of the sound? Watch out for that question from a sound engineer.
It's a trick question.
It's a trick question.
Don't
can't
fall
be honest.
Hi, Shelly. How are you?
Anything besides it sounds great is going to be a big problem, and then your sound is going to suck for the rest of the show. Guaranteed.
Stacey says, in terms of production and style, ain't nobody trying to buy the Beatles, Greg.
Ain't nobody what?
Ain't nobody trying to buy the Beatles, Greg. Do the TikTok to get out of your comfort zone. Challenge.
The Beatles sold 600 million records. I don't know what she means about ain't nobody trying to buy the Beatles.
Listen, I'm gonna be real with you.
600 million. That's
we know this.
I understand. I understand completely what angle she ain't nobody trying to buy the Beatles. I get it, but it's a disadvantage. You're putting yourself at a disadvantage if you're not gonna. Anyone that doesn't. How can you not like Earth, Wind, and Fire? There are two kinds of music, good and bad. And I think most people, at one point in time, I truly believed that most people can differentiate between good and bad music. But the older I get, the more that I listen to what's out on the radio, I realize the average person doesn't know the difference between a good song and a bad song. And I encourage everyone to read, I think it's the University of Madrid did a study on songs, on music over like 100-year period, right? where we're at this point, and you'd be shocked at what the study showed about sound quality being an afterthought. When Greg and I were young, we would put a record on, it sounded great, and then compact discs, came out after, like cassette tapes. And compact discs were, it was a flawless representation of the song from the master. Now, TikTok, iTunes, Spotify, this stuff is streaming at a 92% lesser audio, quality than the masters. So that says a lot about people's ears and how a lot of people can't identify between something being recorded at 48K or 96K, 192K. What's an MP3? What's a WAV file?
They're still going to throw around their opinions regardless.
Yeah,
I don't have to say Beatles. I can say learn how to write a 4-part fugue. I can say it that way. I'm trying to modernize it with the Beatles because pop music sort of started with them, whether you love them or hate them. There was no such thing as that kind of excitement around a song or music or a band. They started it, whether you love them or hate them. And they incorporated all different types of writing techniques, stylistically, what have you, from the blues on. So if you don't want to talk about the Beatles, go learn how to write a 4-part fugue, and then we can talk about that, because that's essentially the same thing. Essentially the same thing. You need to learn 13 species of counterpoint. There's 13 species of counterpoint. So go through the 13 species of counterpoint. Forget the Beatles. Don't listen to them. Listen to 13 different styles on how to make a resolution from 5 to 1. Neapolitan resolutions. We can talk about that kind of stuff. And then you can learn how to write music.
Well, anything nowadays that you listen to, like when we were growing up, like I remember my grandfather.
Wait, hold up. 600 million or not. Look, Beatles, Rolling Stone, Bee Gees, Earth, Wind & Fire, Temptations, Michael, Whitney, Prince, Dolly, AC/DC, 9 Inch Nails, Little Richard, Chuck Berry, Johnny Taylor, etc. Do the TikTok.
Okay.
She just wants to see the TikTok.
She just wants to see the TikTok. Okay, look, do TikTok. Let's touch base back again next week, same time. I got to call my student. I'm late for a very important date.
Go ahead. It's always a pleasure. Thank you, Tiffany.
Yeah.
Thank you for the forum.
Amazing. Thank you, guys. We'll be back next Friday, y'all.
Right.
Thank you to my viewers, our viewers. Here, and I'll give you my little dance. I love you guys. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tiff. Bye.
See ya.